Have you ever looked around and realized that the friendships you once cherished don't feel the same anymore? Maybe you've noticed that social gatherings feel more draining than fulfilling. Or perhaps you find yourself choosing a quiet evening with a book over yet another phone call that feels more like an obligation than a joy. If so, you're not alone. As we grow older, our priorities shift. The need to constantly stay connected, to maintain friendships out of habit or social pressure, starts to fade. And that's not a bad thing. In fact, it can be incredibly freeing. This isn't about loneliness. It's about embracing independence, self-fulfillment, and the peace that comes from truly knowing yourself. In this video, we're going to explore 6 powerful reasons why friendships may no longer hold the same importance after 70. More importantly, we'll uncover how this shift isn't a loss. It's a gain of time, energy, and the freedom to focus on what truly makes you happy. You'll hear real-life examples of people just like you, those who've stopped chasing friendships and, in doing so, found more joy, purpose, and peace than ever before. Before we dive in, take a moment to subscribe and turn on notifications. That way, you won't miss future insights on finding peace, fulfillment, and independence in your later years. Now, let's get started. 1. You no longer need to prove yourself. Think back to your younger years. Friendships often felt like a currency, something you had to earn, maintain, and sometimes even fight for. Whether it was impressing colleagues, keeping up with social circles, or making sure you fit in, relationships often came with an unspoken pressure to prove your worth. This isn't unusual. Research suggests that in adolescence and early adulthood, social acceptance plays a critical role in shaping our self-identity. During those years, friendships weren't just about companionship. They were about belonging, validation, and sometimes even survival in social or professional spaces. But as we age, those pressures fade. And with that, a remarkable freedom emerges. Imagine waking up one day and realizing you no longer have to maintain friendships out of obligation. You don't have to chase people, worry about impressing anyone, or feel guilty for letting go of relationships that no longer bring you joy. That sense of liberation is within reach, and it's one of the greatest gifts that comes with getting older. Harold, a retired financial consultant, spent decades surrounded by people who admired his success. His phone was always ringing, his schedule filled with business lunches and social gatherings. But after he retired, those friendships, once so constant, began to fade. At first, he felt lost, wondering if he had done something wrong. But then, he took a step back and asked himself, were these friendships built on true connection, or were they simply tied to his career? Instead of chasing those fading relationships, Harold embraced the quiet. He rediscovered his love for painting, took long walks without the constant need to check his phone, and found joy in simply being present. Without the weight of social expectations, he felt lighter, freer, and surprisingly happier. This stage of life isn't about loneliness. It's about independence. True happiness doesn't come from how many people surround you. It comes from within. When you let go of the need for external validation, you open the door to something even greater, a life that is fully, authentically your own. 2. Peace becomes more valuable than socializing. There was a time when a full social calendar felt essential. The energy of gatherings, shared laughter, and constant interactions seemed to define a fulfilling life. But as the years go by, priorities shift. The joy of a quiet morning, a peaceful afternoon, or simply being with your thoughts starts to outweigh the need for constant company. If you've noticed this change, it's not a sign of isolation. It's a natural and healthy evolution. As we grow older, we begin to value quality over quantity, especially in relationships. Many friendships, while once meaningful, require ongoing effort. Keeping in touch, attending events, and being available for emotional support. In younger years, this may have felt natural, even necessary. But at a certain point, these obligations can become more draining than fulfilling. It's not that friendships are no longer important, but rather that peace, self-contentment, and emotional well-being take precedence. This transition can feel unfamiliar at first. Society often equates being social with being happy, making it easy to feel guilty for wanting more solitude. But solitude isn't loneliness. It's a space for self-reflection, personal growth, and genuine relaxation. Many people find that as they spend more time alone, they feel less stressed, more in tune with their emotions, and more appreciative of life's simple pleasures. Choosing peace over social pressure doesn't mean closing yourself off. It means allowing yourself to step away from relationships that feel forced and investing in the moments that bring you true happiness. Whether that means spending time on personal interests, deepening a few meaningful connections, or simply enjoying the quiet, the choice is yours. 3. Fewer friendships mean fewer disappointments. As the years go by, friendships change. Some fade naturally, while others fall apart due to distance, shifting priorities, or unreciprocated effort. What once seemed like unbreakable bonds may now feel like distant memories. If you've ever found yourself wondering why certain friends have drifted away, or why you're the only one making an effort, you're not alone. At first, losing connections can feel like a loss. After all, friendships were once a cornerstone of daily life. But with time comes a realization. Fewer friendships often mean fewer disappointments. No longer are you waiting for a call that never comes, feeling hurt when someone cancels plans, or investing energy into relationships that no longer serve you. Instead, you gain something far more valuable: peace. Studies suggest that as people age, they naturally become more selective in their relationships, favoring emotionally meaningful connections over superficial ones. This isn't a sign of isolation. It's a sign of wisdom. It means choosing quality over quantity, surrounding yourself with those who genuinely care, and letting go of relationships that only bring frustration or sadness. William, 78, spent much of his life maintaining friendships that, in reality, had run their course. He was always the one calling, making plans, checking in, yet few of his friends returned the effort. It took years for him to realize that he wasn't truly valued in those relationships. When he finally let go of the need to keep them alive, he felt a surprising sense of relief. The silence he once feared became a source of peace, allowing him to focus on people and activities that truly brought him joy. This shift isn't about bitterness or giving up on friendships altogether. It's about prioritizing your emotional well-being. When you stop chasing one-sided relationships, you create space for deeper, more fulfilling connections, whether with family, new acquaintances, or even with yourself. Releasing the weight of unreciprocated friendships isn't a loss. It's a gain. It's a step toward a life where your time and energy are spent on relationships that uplift you, not drain you. And in that freedom, you may find a deeper sense of contentment than you ever thought possible. If you've stayed with me this far, I hope these insights have given you something to think about. If you found them helpful, please subscribe and share this with someone who might benefit from this perspective. Now, let's continue. 4. Your time becomes more precious. As life moves forward, the way we view time changes. In younger years, it felt like an unlimited resource, something to spend freely on social events, obligations, and relationships. But as you age, time takes on new meaning. Every moment becomes more precious, and the question arises, is this how I truly want to spend my time? Friendships, like any other aspect of life, require effort. There are phone calls to return, visits to arrange, and events to attend. At one point, these social interactions may have felt fulfilling, But now, they might feel more like a responsibility than a joy. There's nothing wrong with realizing that your energy is better spent elsewhere. The days of feeling obligated to maintain every connection are behind you. Now, your time belongs to you, and you get to decide how to use it. This shift isn't about pushing people away. It's about embracing what brings you peace. Some friendships will always be worth nurturing, but others may no longer fit into the life you want to lead. Instead of filling your time with expectations, you can focus on what truly enriches your life. Maybe that's dedicating time to personal hobbies, learning something new, or simply enjoying the stillness of a quiet afternoon. You've earned the right to be selective with your time. Choosing where and with whom to invest it isn't selfish. It's an act of self-respect. After all, your later years should be about fulfillment, not obligation. 5. True companionship comes from within. For much of life, we are taught that being alone is something to avoid. Society often equates solitude with loneliness, making it seem like a void that must be filled with constant companionship. But what if that isn't true? What if being alone could actually be the key to deeper fulfillment, self-discovery, and peace? As the years go by, priorities shift. The need for external validation lessens, and the desire for deeper, more meaningful experiences grows. Many people find that solitude is not a sign of isolation, but rather an opportunity to reconnect with themselves. In earlier years, life may have revolved around friendships, social obligations, and maintaining a sense of belonging. But with time, the realization sets in that true companionship isn't always found in others. It comes from within. When external distractions fade, there is space to reflect, to grow, and to rediscover passions that may have been set aside. Time alone can be filled with quiet walks, creative pursuits, learning, or simply being present in the moment. Rather than fearing silence, it can be embraced as a source of clarity and renewal. There is no need to constantly seek company when contentment is found in one's own presence. This doesn't mean relationships are unimportant. Genuine connections still have great value, but they no longer need to be maintained out of obligation or fear of solitude. Friendships that bring joy remain, while those that feel draining or unfulfilling naturally fade away. This shift allows for relationships that are based on true connection rather than habit. Letting go of the pressure to always be surrounded by others brings a newfound sense of freedom. There is no longer a need to fill every moment with conversation or activity. Instead, there is peace in knowing that fulfillment does not depend on external sources. It comes from within, from a deep understanding and appreciation of oneself. If you've ever feared solitude, consider looking at it differently. Rather than seeing it as loneliness, view it as an opportunity to reconnect with yourself in ways that busy social lives rarely allow. The most important relationship you will ever have is the one you cultivate with yourself. When you nurture that, you'll never truly feel alone. 6. Letting go opens the door to a more fulfilling life. Many people hold on to relationships out of habit, not necessarily because they are meaningful. This is especially true as we age. Friendships formed decades ago may have been deeply important at the time, but people change, priorities shift, and sometimes connections fade. Letting go of relationships that no longer serve you isn't a loss, it's an opportunity. By releasing these unfulfilling ties, you create space for what truly matters: peace, purpose, and genuine happiness. James, now 78, once believed that staying socially active was the key to fulfillment. He filled his days with lunch meetups, calls, and gatherings, thinking that a packed calendar meant a rich life. But over time, he started to notice something. Many of these interactions felt hollow. Conversations revolved around old stories and small talk, and he often left feeling more drained than fulfilled. The truth was, He was maintaining these friendships out of obligation, not joy. One day, he made a conscious decision to stop forcing connections. Instead of trying to keep up with relationships that felt one-sided or exhausting, he shifted his focus inward. He took long walks in nature, picked up woodworking, and finally started learning to play the piano, a dream he had put off for years. He found that, without the pressure of maintaining relationships that no longer brought him joy, he had more time for what truly mattered. He was no longer living by social expectations, but by his own terms. Letting go doesn't mean isolating yourself. It means making room for experiences, passions, and relationships that genuinely enrich your life. As people age, they naturally become more selective with their social circles, focusing on deeper, more meaningful connections rather than superficial ones. This shift isn't something to fear, but to embrace. True happiness isn't measured by the number of people in your life, but by the life you create for yourself. By letting go of what no longer serves you, you open the door to deeper fulfillment, peace, and a future shaped entirely by your own desires. Aging brings many changes, but one of the most profound is how we view relationships, time, and fulfillment. Friendships naturally shift, and sometimes they fade. That's not a loss. It's part of life's rhythm. Letting go of expectations, obligations, and the need for constant social validation isn't isolation. It's independence. The beauty of this stage is the freedom to choose how you spend your time, without pressure or guilt. Independence after 70 doesn't mean loneliness. It means reclaiming your days and filling them with what truly brings you joy. Whether that's quiet mornings with a book, deep conversations with a close friend, or simply enjoying your own company, fulfillment is found in living on your own terms. The relationships that remain will be the ones that uplift and nourish you, not the ones you maintain out of obligation. Your later years have the potential to be the most rewarding yet. By letting go of expectations and embracing the things that bring you peace, you open the door to a richer, more meaningful existence. You have the power to define this chapter on your terms. If this message resonated with you, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your experiences in the comments below. Let's build a community of wisdom, independence, and fulfillment together. And if you found this content helpful, consider subscribing and sharing it with someone who may need to hear this. Your journey is yours to own, and it's never too late to create a life that brings you true happiness.